Ladies and gentlemen, it has finally happened. The Detroit Pistons have traded Jerami Grant to the Portland Trailblazers, but not for the seventh pick. Not even a pick in 2023, 2024, 2025. Yep, that's it. But it's not even their pick. It's a pick from Milwaukee. As you can see here, we're looking at Detroit Bad Boys. I think we were all a little surprised at this one. In fact, I was sitting at my house, didn't see it, and a friend texted me, "What are the Detroit Pistons doing right now?" And that is never a good feeling. Now, there are some things that are possibly very good things that could come out of this trade. Keep listening so I can explain the good stuff that's coming. But first, let's talk about the obvious bad. When I was on Bleacher Report and I looked at this, 35,000 people had already voted on it. 80% said Portland won this trade. They got the best player. The Pistons get nothing right now in return. Like nothing will come from this except for our 2025 first. There is also, if you look down here, we are swapping in the second round pick 46 for 36. So that is something that you can be looking at as well. So I guess you can feel good about that maybe, but we don't get any players in return. So we don't get better. All we do is lose what was our second best player, very, very arguably our second best player. And all we get in return is something in the future. Or is there more? So before you get really frustrated about this, before you turn off this video, let's talk about the good things that are happening for Detroit. Obviously, we are all going to look at the trade and we want to look at it in a vacuum, but you can't look at this trade in the vacuum. In fact, even if you're on Detroit Bad Boys, look at what they say right below this. The trade now gives them, the Detroit Pistons, $43 million in cap space. $43 million. That is a ton of money. Okay. Pistons fans, how do you feel about a lot of cap space? I think a lot of us as Pistons fans have some PTSD when it comes to cap space. The last time we went into a summer with massive cap space, and we've talked about this on this show before many times, it turned into Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva. Actually, that was even before that. The last time we had cap space, it turned into Josh Smith. So I don't think that might have been a trade. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Cap space has not traditionally been a good thing. Detroit is not a team that is usually a player in free agency. Not to mention that, but you couple that with the fact that all the best free agents in this class are restricted free agents. Miles Bridges, Sexton, DeAndre Ayton, the big one that everybody's talking about. These are all restricted free agents. So you're either going to have to do sign-in trades or you're going to have to offer them a lot of money so that the teams won't match it. I think a lot of people believe that Ayton and the Suns are not going to agree to a max contract, that the Suns won't match that. But I also know the Suns aren't just going to sit there and let them get away for nothing. Like, it's not like they're going to do nothing. So there has to be something that goes back. Maybe this asset is what the Suns want. So if all of a sudden we flip this and we turn Jerami Grant into DeAndre Ayton, are you okay with that? Like, I mean, I think that's the other thing. Here's the other kicker on this trade that I think is a good thing for the Pistons. The Portland Trailblazers, from a Norman Powell trade earlier, have $21 million in a trade exemption. We were able to trade Jerami Grant to the Portland Trailblazers for a pick. That's it, which gives us the flexibility to spend it on whatever else we want. Any other team in the NBA that we do this trade with, that's not a thing. We're taking back another contract. And I think that's what Pistons fans were hoping. They were looking like, oh, what about a signing trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers? They give us pick 14 and Colin Sexton. Why didn't we do that? Like, that's what we should have done. Well, clearly, the league didn't value Jerami Grant as much as the Pistons fan base did. Do you think if Troy Weaver has that option or a sign and trade with Phoenix for Jerami Grant, do you think that he wouldn't take that over this? Do you think that if there was many better offers, like much better offers, do you think Troy Weaver would just leave those on the table and take a future pick in 3 years? Like, of course not. So this tells you what the trade scenario was. So here's what I think Troy Weaver's doing. He's saying, I want flexibility. And if you listen to guys who are all about salary capologists and things like that, here's one thing that they will say, and I've always said this too. If you have cap space, even if you are a small market team, every player is available to you in the league via trade. Maybe not via free agency. A lot of players aren't going to choose to come to Detroit. Jerami Grant did. But a lot of players aren't necessarily going to choose to come to Detroit, but anybody is available through trade. So you want to have future assets to get those, and you need cap space. And the way you create future assets is usually cap space. You take on expiring contracts and they throw in first round picks. I remember that's valuable because teams want cap space. If other teams are going for DeAndre Ayton or maybe the Lakers, this is a horrible example, but if the Lakers desperately want Kyrie Irving, then they need to shed salary cap. So in order to shed salary cap, they might be sending us bad contracts, but also future assets in order to do that. Like these are the kind of things that happen. You get in three team trades. What we've learned from Troy Weaver is usually he doesn't make moves in a vacuum. Doesn't happen. So we can't yet grade this trade. If you are grading it based on all it was now and all you're saying to yourself is Jerami Grant for a 2025 first round pick, we get an F. I mean, maybe a D, maybe, because at least you got a first round pick. And even though it's in 3 years, but that's what you would grade it. But they didn't get a 2025 first round pick. They got a 2025 first round pick and $21 million or $20 million, whatever you want to call it, whatever his contract was worth. And I think it was $20 million. So how we spend that money now becomes the value of the trade. So it depends on how we do it. My next question is, how would you like to see it happen? Would you like to see us go out and try and get DeAndre Ayton? Would you like to see us go out and get Miles Bridges, Colin Sexton? Did Jalen Brunson, did any of these guys do it for you? Or would you rather say like, hey, another year of tank, another year where we can guarantee that we still get our pick. Let Saddiq Bey, let Isaiah Stewart, let Cade Cunningham, let Killian Hayes, let these guys develop and not have to fight for minutes. Saddiq Bey can start at the 4 now, doesn't have to fight for minutes with Grant, like all these things, or maybe even bring Bagley back and see what happens with that starting at the 4. And just have another bad year and take on bad contracts and get more capital and more things in the future. So you're going into next year with maybe an extra first round pick or two. Maybe you're going into next year with even more salary cap space. Like, what would you like to see Troy Weaver do with it? Do you want to see him go out and go after restricted free agents now? Would you like to see a starting 5 if he can swing it of Cade Cunningham, Colin Sexton, Saddiq Bey, Keegan Murray, and then DeAndre Ayton? Like, would that be good enough for you? Would you all of a sudden say, okay, I understand this move? Or would you like to see him tank for another year, get more assets, and then have another high draft pick next year, along with a bunch of capital to spend? We can't judge this. The soonest we'll be able to judge this trade is like 2 or 3 weeks from now. That's it. Well, maybe. I mean, if they come out tomorrow or tonight and say Pistons are involved in another three-team trade to acquire DeAndre Ayton, then like, okay, all of a sudden we can be like, all right, great trade. Because it was basically we lost Grant, we got Ayton. Everything else is the same. And we moved up in our draft pick in the second round. And we got a 2025 first. So like those are the kind of things you don't know what's going to happen. But again, I will caution you on that. Like none of that's guaranteed. When it's a restricted free agent, none of it's guaranteed, even unrestricted. So I'm very interested to see what happens. I think the two most likely scenarios are we spend big money on a restricted free agent in this offseason or two, and or we take on a horrible contract like a John Wall and get a future first from the Houston Rockets for paying him $47 million or whatever it is this year. So don't jump the gun yet. Don't go killing everybody. Don't renounce your fandom to the Detroit Pistons because you don't like this trade in a vacuum, because in a vacuum, it's a bad trade. It is, but we have time for this to develop. I remember when Troy Weaver was just drafting or signing centers, and nobody knew what was going on. It was like center after center after center, Plumlee, and it was just what's happening. And then all of a sudden, all of them were off the team. They were moved to other places. There was one that made no sense because it was dead money. But other than that, like they were moved, things made sense. So we have salary cap room. That is something that's very, very valuable. The question is, do you trust Troy Weaver to spend it wisely and not have it be a Josh Smith, not have it be a Charlie Villanueva or a Ben Gordon or whatever that looks like? Tell me what your thoughts are. We're under a day to the draft. I mean, like by the time you're watching this, it might even be draft day. So I think it makes things much more intriguing on draft day because I think it makes the Pistons players to do something even more on draft night. So stick around here. Hey, you could have seen this anywhere. Thanks for watching it here. We appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you like our channel, and we'll see you on the next one.